Alright, hi guys, I'm T and I'm an addict.
Thanks, T.
Hi, I'm a little nervous about this, so bear with me. I've given a few talks about like my recovery and like where I came from. I don't like to put too much detail into like the drugs I use, where I came from, because we all know how to get high, we all know how to end up in these rooms. We're here. I will say that I have a mental health background, and I struggled with an addiction along with an eating disorder, and the two played hand in hand for me throughout my life and my recovery. I also have a trauma background, so that's something that has come into light that I'll touch on throughout my speech or whatever this is. But yeah, like okay, so like what brought me into the rooms? I went to treatment for an eating disorder. I had mental health issues, and I sought help for my mental health, and then I decided to seek help for my eating disorder. And I was in and out of the hospital for a little bit, and then they finally said, like, you're going to residential, like, you gotta get something more, you gotta get more help. And when I was at residential, I was a people pleaser. I did the program, I did what I needed to do to, like, make everyone happy, like, I ate the food. When I got into the step-down program at that facility, my therapist there had mentioned, like, hey, I think you're an addict. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm not. And, like, we fought about it constantly for the next, like, month that I was there. And then I left treatment, and, like, the first thing I did when I had the chance was used. And then, like, the next morning I called that therapist and was like, so I think I'm an addict. And she was like, yeah, like, that's cool that you finally realized that. So I called a friend that I knew that was in the program, not even like a friend, just an acquaintance I didn't know very well, but she was a Facebook friend, and she had been in recovery from an eating disorder too, and I knew she had like an addiction background. And I was like, so I think I'm an addict, like I'm not sure what to do about this. And she said, like, come to our meeting. So she took me to my first meeting, the Oswego meeting, if anyone's been there, it's amazing. Got to hear some really great recovery that night, and I left with my acquaintance being my sponsor, because like someone suggested getting a sponsor, so I was like, well, like, I guess I have to get a sponsor because I'm a people pleaser, so I do what they tell me to do. And then someone told me, like, buy a book, so I bought a book, and I was still struggling with the idea if I really was an addict or not. I come from a family of addicts who used different drugs than I did, so I viewed them as addicts, and I used my drug of choices as like non-addict drugs. I just separated the two in my head, which like now looking back I'm like, that was silly. But I had it like, it was black and white, like I knew it. And then it became really fuzzy, and I like was like, well, maybe I am an addict, but I'm not like the same addict as them. I read the basic text. I was supposed to read the first 10 chapters, and I read Who's an Addict, and I called my sponsor. I'm like, fuck, dude, like, I think this book was written about me. And then from then on, like, I, like, told my therapist, and I worked diligently with my sponsor, and I'm like, yeah, like, I'm definitely an addict. I slowly started figuring out that my eating disorder was also very addictive to me. Like, the behaviors I was using, I used in an addictive way. And then I was staying clean, but I was using my eating disorder at that point, and I started to like realize that like the two just like, it wasn't working out. Like I was staying clean, but I wasn't in recovery. I was going to meetings, and all these people had like recovery and like were happy and like joyous, and I'm like, okay, well, like I'm not that at all. Like I'm not excited to be here. Like I just wasn't fitting in, like wanting to be a part of the program. And I think a lot of it had to do with my eating disorder. I also struggle with self-injury, so that's another addiction. As my recovery progressed, I definitely will say that like the sharp objects were my first drug of choice. But it took me a while to like figure that one out too, to figure out that was also an addiction. In the rooms, they said often that the drugs is just a symptom of our disease, and the disease is really in our brains. It's a thinking disease. And once I really like got a hold of that idea, I was able to like put in perspective, like, yeah, I'm not like a drug user, I'm an addict. Like I have, like, you can throw anything at me and I can obsess and compulse over it like no other. So I admitted all that to my sponsor, and I started working the first step. The first step was really eye-opening for me because there's like 69 questions that you go through, and they really point out like your behaviors. And I'm like, oh, like, yeah, like this, like they ask like, do you manipulate someone? And I'm like, yeah, like I do, like this happened. So I was able to put the pieces together. And then I moved on to step 2. And with step 2, like we were supposed to be creating a higher power. And like I kind of grew up Christian. I grew up like with God as my higher power. So I knew to fall back on him. I grew up Catholic, and then I converted to Christianity in high school. So I was really conflicted on like what a God even was. Like if it was like this like strict guy that like punishes me when I do something wrong and I have to beg for forgiveness, or this guy that's gonna love me no matter what. And I really humanized him. So I gave him human qualities, which doesn't work because he's greater than us. So he has to like have more power than like a human does. I held him to human standards and assumed that he was going to do human things like leave me and hurt me. But I knew what he was, so I knew my relationship already with him. So I answered those questions and like moved on to step 3. Step 3 I struggled with. I like control. I like to be in control of my like everything possible, like all my stuff and probably yours. And it was when I was doing step 3 that I realized, well, I didn't realize, my therapist and my treatment team realized that I had gone really deep into my eating disorder again, and they like sent me to the hospital. But when I was in the hospital, I decided to go back to residential treatment to work on my eating disorder, because I had known what I knew about addiction at that point, and I knew that like I couldn't turn over my eating disorder. I was not ready to turn that over without some help. And I knew the treatment center, I went back to the same one I was at the first time, and I knew that treatment center would give me what I needed because I was ready to take what they had to offer. I wasn't ready the first time. So I went back there, got to spend a lovely week in residential thanks to insurance, but got to spend a lot of time in their step-down program and was really challenged because I knew all the staff and they knew me, and they didn't let me like get away with anything. I couldn't like wiggle my way through anything. They called me out on all my bullshit, and then my insurance cut me. So I was suicidal and went to the hospital so that I could go to the hospital and get a few days in the hospital and then come back out and like be a step down again. So then they would let me go back into treatment. It's like playing the insurance company's game. When I went back, I had to spend the night at my parents' house because the insurance didn't take me the first night. So I spent the night at my parents' house, and the next day was my sister's first communion, and I used an eating disorder behavior after making like a list of like everything I wasn't going to do, and like sharing it with my mom and my therapist, and like saying like I'm gonna be good, like I got this, I want recovery. I used the behavior, and my stepdad walked in on me while using it, and all the shame that like just hit me in that moment was enough for me to be like, something's gotta give, like I gotta do something. I went back to treatment that week and was able to work really hard on myself and my like the eating disorder and the addiction in general. That following Monday, I like told a few secrets that I had kept throughout that week. And that following Sunday, I wrote a letter to myself and just forgave myself for like everything I had done and everything I probably will do that isn't up to my standards. And just giving myself permission to be human. And then like the whole time I was at the treatment center the second time, every day at the end of the day in one of our groups, it would be like, have you called your sponsor? And I was like, yeah, I should probably do that. And I never did the entire time I was there. So then when I got out the second time, I realized that like I needed something more from the sponsor. I needed something different. This is awkward because she's sitting right next to me, but I was able to go to a few meetings, and I found someone who just like shared at the meetings and shared with her heart and shared honestly about where she was, and she had like solid recovery, but she struggled, and she was human, and I needed that. I needed someone to like tell me that like it was gonna be okay, but also tell me like it's shitty right now and that's okay too. So I asked her to be my sponsor, and she said yes, thankfully. And then she asked if I wanted to start the steps over, like what my idea was, and I told her yes, because I had surrendered my shit when I was at treatment that Sunday that I wrote the letter to myself, like I like gave it all away. Like I was like, God, take this. Like I don't want this anymore. I am like, your will be done. So I worked the steps again, and I was able to incorporate everything into my first step. And I was honest and open in my first step. And then I got to the second step. And I could have easily gone right through it again like I did the first time. But I decided that I didn't want like the Christianity, like church God that I knew of to be my higher power. I wanted I wanted to believe in something higher than myself, and I wanted something higher than myself to take care of me. The literature suggests that it be compassionate, loving, and caring, and that's what I wanted, and that's what I based it around. I didn't picture the God that I had always pictured. I pictured like a higher power that was loving, caring, compassionate, and like wasn't gonna leave me no matter what I did. And I started praying to him, like, and that was the first time, like I had prayed before, but that was the first time that like I prayed and like really thought that like someone could be listening, and like felt like a presence of someone else. Being able to work step 2 again, I think made all the difference in my recovery, because it gave me that personal relationship that I've always needed with a higher power. And then step 3, like at that point, after like surrendering and like creating like my higher power, step 3 is just like handing it over to that higher power. And once I created something that I trusted in, and I was so ready to like get rid of my shit, so I was like, take it, like it's yours, like I don't want it. Working the third step, being able to like honestly give myself away and not be like, I've always used to like be like, okay, well like I'll give it away to God, like I'll pray about it, and then I'll be like, just kidding, God, like let me take that back. Let me hold on to that a little longer. But I gave it all. Like I was like, I'm done, like here it all is. So step 3 like helped me like with that, helped me just like clean myself, and like get ready for the 4th step, the like scary 4th step. I heard horror stories about the 4th step, and I heard some really good stories about the 4th step. I loved my 4th step. I was able to get honest with myself and like what had been done to me and what I had done, and how things have affected me, and how my behaviors like were so like, of course I would have acted a certain way if that's like what I was learned or what I was taught, and like with like if A happened, of course like B is a solid reaction to it. And it made me be able to like not be like, oh well I did B, so I'm like a horrible person. It made me feel more like, okay, like B is a possibility of that, and like I'm not, like I don't need to hold myself to a higher standard. Like I'm human, I do what other people would have reacted to. Sharing my 4th step was like definitely interesting. The literature like tells you to like read it over. So I read it over, and I was also working a different fellowship at that time that suggested reading it in front of a mirror, which I don't like hanging out in front of a mirror in general, but like reading it out loud to myself in front of a mirror, I really felt like I was like talking to myself. So being able to like have that moment with myself was super like powerful, just like me like owning my own shit. The literature also suggests for your 5th step, when you're sharing your 4th step, that it could be your sponsor, or it could be like a guy at the bus stop. And like if any of you guys share your story with a guy at the bus stop, like please let me know, I want to meet you. I can't imagine like sitting down at a bus stop and be like, hey, you got like 4 hours to spare. I took the traditional route. I shared it with my sponsor. And it was great. I was super nervous and super shameful of some of the stuff I said, but I like had prayed, and I had my relationship with my higher power, and I had a relationship good enough with my sponsor to know that like she wasn't going to judge me. She might question some things and might share her insight with me, but she wasn't going to judge me. I never felt judged by her with anything else that I had shared up to that point, and we had a pretty solid relationship. I was calling her regularly. So I shared it, and like she had a lot of similar experiences, which like just validated what happened to me like that much more. Like, okay, like this is normal, like this is what happens. It really normalized my like situations that I had been in, and just having that connection to be able to like connect with another human being who's like, yeah, I get it, and not like ask any more or less from me, like not like be like, oh no, like don't share that, like I can't hear that. but she just like wholeheartedly like allowed me to share my story, and it was great. And did we cry?
Hell
We
yeah.
laughed.
And cried.
Did I cry?
I cried. I don't know.
Okay, she cried. I don't know if I cried.
Don't really cry.
I don't really cry. I'm working on it. If any of you guys want to like pinch me after the meeting. So that was the 5th step. And like, to be honest, I have not been working my program as diligently as I should. I've been sitting on the 6th step. My sponsor had a little time away from life, and I took that as a vacation, and I just kind of rolled with it. And I didn't hold myself accountable, because at this point in my recovery, I can hold myself accountable, but I totally was like, yeah, like, vacation time, step work, please hold. And I haven't been doing it. I just started getting back into the step 6. Step 6 was definitely hard. When I started it, I had to list out all my character defects. Turns out I'm not perfect at all, and that was hard to swallow. And it was interesting because I had written out my character defects, and then I wrote out like the dictionary definition of the word, and then I wrote out my definition of the word and how I relate it to myself. And it was really interesting to see like how like I had thought that I was like I had a certain defect, but like my definition of it was the complete opposite of the dictionary's definition. And just to like even explore like each defect a little further to see how like I react and like how it like comes out in me. I had an assignment where I had to write down all my character defects that I engaged in, I guess the word, for a week, and I was supposed to do it for 7 consecutive days, and I like fucked it up every day. Vulgar language is one of my character defects, and I still like have a problem with that. So yeah, that assignment took forever. So then when I finally like started my step work, I just had that huge gap in between anyway. And it was hard. It's hard to like sit back, especially having a trauma past. I'm so used to people telling me it's not my fault, it's not your fault. And I do believe that like some of the trauma, well, all the trauma that happened to me was not my fault. But it's interesting to see your role in it, and your role in other things. Like, it wasn't my fault that like a traumatic thing happened to me, but it was my fault that I was like a bitch to someone. And to take ownership of that, I guess that's what you do in the 7th step. Not there yet. Yeah, I don't know. Hold on. Taking ownership of it and like having to like actually recognize that with myself now, and recognizing that I'm not perfect, that I can strive for perfection all I want, and I'm not gonna get there, which is also kind of like a weight lifted off my shoulders too, because with having like I had a perfectionist personality to begin with. My eating disorder let me strive on my perfectionism. So not having my eating disorder, I tried to pick like anything else I could to be perfect with. And when I like started my step 6 and realized that like it wasn't going to happen, I'm not going to be perfect. It was really eye-opening and humbling. Now in recovery, that's my experience with the steps, and I love the steps. I love open meetings where we're able to like share about how important and like amazing the steps are, because they have truly like transformed my life. And I know like my life's been like a little out of whack lately, and I know it's because I haven't been doing my step work. I haven't been diligent, but I still go to meetings. I'm a year and 9 months in recovery, and I have a little over 13 months of recovery from my eating disorder. I go to meetings for both issues. I'm able to do things like now that I never thought was possible. I have a trauma background. I have been working diligently on my trauma, work with a therapist who specializes in trauma. I'm able to like feel my feelings today, which is so weird, and to like not like want to run from them. I have a clear mind when I go into therapy, and I'm not like high going into therapy, which definitely makes a difference if you want like improvements of yourself in therapy. I'm able to like hold relationships now. I had a lot of friends. I was super social in college, and like throughout my life, I have like a lot of acquaintances. now I will call them acquaintances. Before, like, they were all my BFFs, but it turns out they weren't. But now I have, like, solid relationships with people who I know care about me, and that I care about. Like, I reach out to them every day and ask them how they're doing, and they reach out to me, and, like, when I see them, like, they give me a hug, and, like, I know that, like, they enjoy my company. They enjoy me being there. It's not just, like, some project that we have to, like, come together and work on and pretend we like each other. I'm able to, like, have a relationship today. She told me not to, like, point it out, but I am. I'm in a relationship, and that's never something I thought was possible. So that's, like, really cool, being able to, like, get close with someone on, like, a different level. I was never really open or honest with anyone in general at all. So to be open and honest on, like, a friendship level is one thing, but to be open and honest on, like, a relationship level is, like, a whole new thing. And I never thought I could get that close to someone. I never thought that, like, someone wouldn't be able to hurt me that way, or I wouldn't, like, run away or something. So that's amazing. And it's all because of this program. It's all because of this program. It's all because of, like, the people that were here before me who taught me how to do it and gave me the suggestions. And then the newcomers too, reminding me about where I was at, and where I don't want to go back to. Like, I feel for the newcomers in this room. Shit's gotta be rough for you right now, and I don't want to be in your place, but I'm, like, more than happy to, like, give you suggestions and, like, help you through it to get to where I'm at, because being in recovery, like a solid recovery, is pretty good. I'm enjoying it. I don't think I'm gonna go back, so you guys can quote me on that. And with that, I will wrap up, so thanks for listening.